Well, thank you for tuning in to the Small Business Sit Down. I'm Jeff Fox with Star Fox Media, and today we have David Knoll of the David Knoll Foundation.
The Helen Knoll Foundation.
Of the Helen Knoll Foundation. I asked you before
You
just
did.
to make sure, and I still did it wrong.
That's right.
That's right. Well, thanks for being here today. Thanks for taking the time to sit down with us.
That's my pleasure.
So I usually like to start off with, your background and, how it is that you got to where you are today. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I had my sights on a professional baseball career. My dad had played for the San Diego Padres down in 1940, and being the youngest of 5 kids, I got the resources of my parents when they were a little older, but also the benefit of an older brother that was able to push me along. So all through Little League and through high school, I was always the head of the curve. So had a lot of grooming towards that direction. So that was the major focus of my life. That and Boy Scouts were the 2 sports.
The dream.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
actually, I did Boy Scout. I did Cub Scouts, and I only did 1 year of Boy Scouts, but I also played baseball through Little League and Pony and Colt and all those. And so that's awesome. That's a lot of fun. And so your professional baseball career, I mean, I was going to say, that's kind of a long reach for a lot of people, but since, it was in your family, you probably knew exactly what it took.
Yeah, but when it really changed was when I chose to go to college rather than play professional ball out of high school. Because back in the 70s, a college player wasn't rated as well as a player that had already been playing 4 years in the minor leagues. So that really changed the trajectory a lot. But I was still able to play for a year and a half in the Chicago Cubs minor leagues organization, and so I got to live the life for a year and a half and to experience what making $600 a month meant in the minor leagues and bus rides and dealing with all the fun things. And the kind of the funny thing is that I was one of the few guys on my team that had a college education. So the only person I could really talk to was the trainer. So because he was college educated, most of the players wanted to just talk about, how are they doing on the baseball field, what the big club was doing, maybe who you were with the night before. So it wasn't a very stimulating from an academic point of view, but playing baseball, you play for 7 hours and you have 17 hours to keep yourself out of trouble when you're in the minor leagues. So, I got to experience that. But it was really the choice from when I chose to go college route rather than the pro route.
Well, what was it that you studied in college? What took you away from baseball?
I studied biology. I had a great high school mentor that was a biology teacher, and he taught for over 50 years. So when I taught back at my high school, he was still teaching, so we were able to, connect back up again. But I was in biological sciences, but I wasn't one to follow the medical pathway because everybody in biological sciences is pre-med.
Right.
And so I was more in the organismal zoology. Little did I know it was kind of a precursor to learning about cancer and from the foundation. So there was kind of the glimpse of that. I actually even took a class on cancer and had done some research in molecular biology at the Sidney Farber Cancer Institute. So all those things were kind of little starts that would come together later when we started the foundation. But it started in college. And the same thing with my photography career kind of started at that point.
Sounds like you had a lot going on back in college.
Well, it was, and I was 3,000 miles away from home. And so the first Christmas, my parents asked me what I wanted, and I already had my baseball bat and my glove, so I was fine with that. So I asked for a camera, a 35 millimeter camera, and my mom gave me $100. She goes, "You can either buy your own camera new and put your own money, or buy a used one." And so I bought a used one, and I figured by the time that camera fell apart, I had earned about $18,000 with that camera. So it was a a start of a career that I did not anticipate, but it allowed me a lot of freedom to do the things that I enjoyed doing.
It's very interesting. So you're, were you still in college? Were you still thinking that you wanted to play baseball professionally? Because I mean, it sounds like you did a little bit. You did minors afterwards.
I was on the varsity for 4 years.
Yeah.
So I was, and we went to the NC2A playoffs. So it was I was on that trajectory and got to fulfill that for a year and a half. But the photography kind of came along, and it was kind of a funny story, because I found somebody that could teach me how to take pictures in college. Because up till when I was in high school, I was always on the other side of the camera. They were pictures taken when I was playing football or baseball or that type of experience. But then when I found somebody that could teach me, he said, David, I'll make you a deal. He says, if you join the yearbook, he says, I'll teach you how to use your camera. You'll have unlimited film. You'll have unlimited dark room, and you'll have a refrigerator full of beer at your disposal.
That sounds like quite the deal. I might actually need to start rethinking my career.
Yeah.
That actually sounds pretty nice.
And so by the time I graduated, I had over 70 pictures in the yearbook.
Nice.
And so as we've had different reunions over the years, because we just had our 40th, was that they would use the pictures from the yearbook as a way of our collective class identity. Right. And who took the pictures from that identity was me, and it was pictures of my friends, my professors, my experiences. Old girlfriends are in those pictures. And so it was, little did I know that photography was going to be such a big part of my life that that I could earn a living by doing it. So it was just a great way to get into photography in a very easy way, and then go out and then have the bona fides enough that I could make it into a profession for over 35 years.
That's very interesting. So how did you, was that yearbook experience enough where you're just like, you know what, I want to be a professional photographer right out of college? Was it some time after that where it was more of a hobby at the time? You just enjoyed it? Like, what was the thought when you bought the camera, did the yearbook class, and were enjoying taking all those photos?
Yeah, I thought it was just more of it would be college type of thing. But one of the things when I was supplemented, when I was playing in the minor leagues, is the players would come to me and go, would you take pictures that I could send back to my family? And so I was, and I would charge them $10 for, 15, beer money or something in that category. But I got the feel of selling my work and what that experience was. And then I joined a photography contest in Sarasota, Florida, and won a photography contest. And one of the things was that they interviewed me, and they had a full spread in their Sunday paper. And so I really started to see the power of photography. In college, I was able to meet presidential candidates. I was able to meet celebrities. I was able to be in my first musical as a result of being the photographer for that production. And so I learned that the power of an image and what it could do and what it could mean. And then when I was done playing professional baseball and I was in graduate school for biology and civil engineering, a friend of mine came up and said, well, would you photograph my friend's wedding? And I go, sure, why not?
I feel like that's always the gateway drug.
It is. Well, weddings, because they're so easy to market, and there's a time and a date, and it's something that you do. You don't have to really push for it. It kind of comes your way. And so in my 35-year career, and it's still doing photography now, I was able to get to the level of a professional master photography from Professional Photographers of America, which was the preeminent organization for professional photographers. And less than 5% of all professional photographers ever got to the level of a master photographer. And so that became a big part of my identity in that part. But little did I know when I first started that I had any artistic or any creative bones in my body.
It actually sounds kind of the opposite of, you're a biology major, right? So you're like a scientist and you're also a photographer. So it's like that that logic center, right brain, left brain, right, left brain, left brain meets right brain, right? So it's like the creative and the business, creative and the science, like as two different sides, and you were pursuing both at the same time.
And I even did that with when you have biology and civil engineering. How more left, right brain can you be in that category? And I realized why there weren't a lot of engineers that had any biology background. And so I was coming from it from that point of view and had a lot of interest in making that a career. But I was making as much in my part-time photography as I was as a junior engineer in an engineering firm here in San Diego. And so even though without the support of my wife's my mother-in-law said, do not let him start his own business. Do not let him work for himself. He needs to have a corporate job and a paycheck to support you. But my blessed wife, she said, no, as long as David's happy and he's making some money, then that's what I want him to do. And because that allowed me the freedom to really develop my business and really go for it. So,
I mean, it kind of sounds like it started like a passion, then moved on to maybe like a side gig while you're doing the like pursuing
the baseball
and as well as maybe even into the engineering part. And then there was a point where, you said it was paying you more. So did you just basically have to make that decision at some point? Like, you know what? Photography is where I'm going. Like I'm done with the engineering. I'm done with the baseball. I'm going to go for, this is my calling.
Well, the photography was going more towards a third world experience, being out in the field. And my wife goes, well, we're not going to go to Israel. We're not going to go to Egypt, or we're not going to go to Central America and live there, because that was where I was combining the biology with the engineering as a way of solving engineering problems. But that was more of a third world rather than the high-tech world of California. So that's where she kind of cut off the engineering, and I said I can make it as a photographer.
And so you're starting up this photography business. Did you focus mostly on weddings at first because that was kind of where you started?
Yes.
And then is that how you kind of like kept going with that throughout your photography career, or did you move on to other things?
No, I stayed primarily with event photography. I did a number of brochures for engineering companies because I was able to bring some of my engineering into the photography realm. But no, weddings allowed me a life balance, work-life balance that allowed me to work on a Saturday, but then have the rest of the week open to do the things that I needed to do with raising two daughters and enjoying that part of my life. And 3 times was a wedding photographer of the year here in San Diego County. So it was very successful. Yeah. Enjoyed it and it paid the bills and allowed me to travel and do the things that put my time where it was important. And that was kind of led me to the kind of starting the foundation too, is that photography allowed me the financial means to do the initial parts of the foundation.
Very interesting. So I feel like within photography, there's like that event kind of side of it, and then there's like the corporate side, right, where you're doing more like photography for products or for headshots or for other marketing type things. So did you ever you said you dabbled a little bit in the engineering part, or the more of like, what would you say, architecture kind of stuff? Because
exactly, yeah, more corporate,
right?
Brochures but you do that part of that was executive portraiture. So did a lot of beach portraiture. Enjoyed that because that was an iconic San Diego scene, and every family deserved a beautiful sunset family portrait, and so did a lot of that. And now that I've been in photography now, and my wife says I'm semi-retired, I can kind of pick out the projects that I enjoy doing, like pictures for the church, pictures for headshots for people, doing stock photography, travel photography, all the things, because you don't really stop doing that. It's a lifelong avocation.
That was actually what I was going to ask next. Is as a professional photographer, do you still keep it as a hobby as well, right? Like, so if you travel around, do you still bring your camera? Do you still enjoy taking photos?
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
So, that's always very interesting to me because, like, again, like I do some marketing, but I also do a lot of video work, and I have a hard time doing I do it for business all day. So I always forget to take videos when it's for myself. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. Do you ever have that problem with photography? Like where you forget that you're a photographer when you're out doing, you're like, this would make a good photo. Oh, wait.
Yeah. Well, as a professional photographer, you really see things as a photographer. You see the way a camera was. And so my wife has to sometimes get me out of trouble because I'll say to somebody, oh, your face would be photographed perfectly from this side, or I see this in you, and then she'd have to say, well, he's a professional photographer. Don't think he's being a little creepy there. Yeah. But it is something that always kind of stimulates. I'm always looking for angles and looking for what would make the best image, because that's what it's all about, what the lighting is.
Doing this.
Yeah, visually, definitely. Yeah. But, you're looking at cropping, you crop it in your mind. And for a couple of years, I taught high school photography and my student with digital photography. And my students couldn't believe that I could take a picture without looking at the back of the camera. That because I knew each time when I was using film that each time I hit the shutter was $1. And so I better get that image the first time. And so you have to learn you need to learn the technical part of photography as well as the creative. And that is a big, big part because there's a real science to photography, but the creative part is where the emotions and the passions go.
I think this is a semi-related story. I think one of the most difficult projects that I ever had to do when I was doing film school type things was they gave me a Super 8 video camera with a reel of film in it, and there was obviously no digital aspects to it at all. Right. And they said, now shoot a film. And it's like, oh, you get one take. You have no editing because we're not going to cut this film. We're not so you get one take at everything. And so they made you really plan out your shots. And you had to really think in my head, like, okay, if they come from that, they're going to come from this side. It's going to take 2 seconds, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. They're going to say these lines, and they better say them right. And then, they're going to walk off to this side. That next shot, they need to be coming from this way. Because if I do it wrong and I watch it back, there's nothing we can do. It's locked in.
I bet you enjoyed watching the movie 1917. That was just... Oh, you didn't? Because that's all one continuous shoot. The whole movie. And that's the reason why it won so many Oscar.
I may have seen parts of it in film school. That might have been like a thing that...
It really was a cinematic achievement that they'd be able to do. And then you see behind the scenes how they did it. It was just incredible to be able to keep that one continuous shoot going.
We got to make cuts like with just like the cameras were very cool because as soon as you hold the trigger and it starts filming, and as soon as you let go, it actually makes a clean cut. So we were able to do multiple shots, like multiple different scenes, but you had to like time when you pulled the trigger and when you let go to the frame because otherwise you're not, right. You make the cuts while you're shooting, which is like terrifying. Right. It was terrifying, right. But it made you learn a lot. And I think that's what you're like, that you got to transfer that to your students and that you could do that with that you had to be able to do that with your film naturally. So, I guess the long story short is I guess we have it too easy now.
Yes. It is because you get that instant gratification that where before you had to wait until things were processed and then you looked back at the pictures that you came out with.
Right.
And it was just so magical at that point. Now you get it right. Oh, okay, now I have it. I can move on. But I'll do an event and I'll take one picture of the people and they'll look at me like, the other photographer took 10 pictures. Why did you only take one? I said, well, I have what I have. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next scene.
Yeah.
Because that was part of, as a photographer, you kind of plan what the album would be, what the sequence, or how pictures interacted with each other in order for people to buy 10 pictures rather than to buy one. And you hate to say it from the business point of view, but it all kind of worked together, because there were a lot of good photographers that were not good business people, and they were starving. And there were a lot of good business people that were average photographers, and they made a ton of money because they knew how to market that and how to get your name out there and people wanting.
And that's an interesting
services.
That's an interesting segue there too, because I mean, again, like as we started a marketing company, because my vision was that there's all these very talented people. I worked in the film industry first, doing businessy stuff for film companies. So people would bring us a film idea, we'd help develop the picture, figure like, attach talent, do the financing, do the marketing plan, do all those type of things. And it was so interesting working with people that were so creative, right? Because they're screenwriters, they're directors, there's people that like have this artistic vision, but they don't have the business sense.
Right.
And so as a person who I was like the person that was in between those two, right? So I had to like know all the business people, I had to know how to work with creative people and kind of bridge that gap. And I was like, I should do the same thing as for my marketing company. There's so many independent, very talented professionals out there that are good at their craft, but they don't necessarily know how to do marketing or how to run their businesses. And so as an independent photographer, I'm sure that there's like, how much % do you think went into actually taking photos, and how much % of your time went into like doing your marketing, doing your accounting, doing all those other peripheral?
Probably 10, 15% was actually behind the camera. And it's even kind of gotten worse now with digital, because you spend so much more time on the computer, because now you can fuss with your things, and your pictures, your images, and crop, and do all the things post-production, where before we would take the pictures and then we'd put them right in. We already had a purposefulness to that. So the computer has just given us much more creative, much more a finish to the final image, which is what it's all about.
Right. And then, so how did you do your own marketing and stuff during that? Did you bring in another company to help you, or did you just like do your own marketing and find these clients on your own?
It was a word of mouth is such a big part of it. We would do different bridal shows and bridal bazaars, and so we'd get out to where the people that were buying the, and again with the wedding, it became they came, oh, we have a date. Are you available that date? And so it was a lot more simpler, more direct marketing. And then you got to know the people that did the other services, because a wedding has, dozens of different vendors that are part of it. And so we joined different teams and different networks. But being part of Professional Photographers of San Diego County, or part of the affiliate of Professional Photographers of America, really gave the business classes that you needed to be a professional. Because I found it very difficult to charge somebody $6,000 to photograph their wedding, to be able to justify that amount of money, or somebody to say that's $50 for an 8x10. And I found that very difficult to sell my own work that way. But then as you start to develop the business part of it, you have to, I have to make X amount of money in order to survive. And so I have to get that dollar up, but also I have to get the volume enough to be able to make a profit. And that became, because there are a lot of starving artists, and that's the reason why they are, because to be able to look somebody in the eye and say it's going to cost you $5,000 or $10,000, or that 16x20 is going to be worth $550. You have to have a lot of self-confidence, and being in business for yourself, it can be not a big boost, confidence booster. Right. You're always being self-doubt, and you're always, those things start to factor into the equation.
If you're only actually truly doing, 10% of your time is photography, well, you still have to fund yourself for that other 90% of your time that's doing all those other things. You're not getting paid while you're doing your marketing, while you're doing your accounting, while you're doing your administrative work, while you're, looking for clients, going to these roadshows. You're not getting paid to do that. So you have to make enough during that 10% to cover your whole life. And that's the interesting thing about service-based industry, is like the service that you provide is usually only a very small percentage of what your time is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also just it's a difficult thing to do. And so it's like you have to be good at it's almost like you're a creative, you're a artist, but you're also an entrepreneur.
Right. No doubt about that.
And so learning the entrepreneurial side of how to run a business, how to start a business, how to do all that, that's kind of what we like to do on this podcast, because there's a lot of so many talented people out there that have a passion to do something, but they don't know how to do it. So,
or how to be out and be able to promote yourself, and to be able to talk about yourself, and to being part of a networking group, and learning your 30-second elevator speech, and to be able to create a need in somebody that might not to. And that's what was great about weddings, is there was a need. You didn't have, where with a family portrait, you would have to engage with somebody maybe 9 to 10 times before they finally said, oh, well, let's do that family portrait.
Right.
And then you do that for $500-$600. And wow, that's a lot of, it has to pay for a lot of downtime.
And it's very interesting because, like, in the marketing process, I mean, like, I don't know if I'm getting too far into the weeds on this, but there's a part of the marketing process called the education process, where basically you have to tell, show your clients why what you do is important, like what it is you do and how it would help them. And if they don't know what your service is very well, and they don't know how it will affect them, they're not going to pay for it, right? So there's that education process that you have to take people through. With wedding photography, I think you nailed it right on the head, is they know, I'm having a wedding, I need a photographer. So they're already past that education process. They already are looking to hire. So it's like, it's since the education process has already been done, basically. So that's why you're having to spend a lot less time to get those clients versus, someone for a product, like, they don't know if they need a portrait right now, or what are the different options? Oh, I could get like a 6x10. What would I do with a 6? Like, how big is 6x10? What would I do with that? Like,
well, I want a big picture to put on my wall. I want an 8x10. You're going, no, that's
80
not
by 100. No.
Right. And so what we used to do is project our images to make them bigger, because sometimes people had trouble scaling an image, because an image as a 30 by 40 inch image looks completely different than it does as a 4x6 proof or something in that. So you're always kind of educating that part. But again, that was what weddings was so nice, is that they came, we want to hire you for this date. But then you had the question you always were asked, how are you different than the other person that might have the same equipment? What's your added value?
Right.
And that's where that made a big difference. Because some people would call you and say, because of a referral from a friend, I want to book you for whatever. But then at the bridal shows, it would be, okay, now apples and apples. How do you compare?
You're probably not the only wedding photographer there at the bridal.
No, there'd be
events.
20, 30 of them. And it's easy to book a wedding for $500, but you spend $500 just getting there at the wedding. You're not making any money at $500. Yeah. So each increment above $500 are now where you're starting into the profit area. And typically your costs were 20, 30% of what your the money that you brought in went to overhead for that. So that gave you that. So we had a good profit margin built into that, but you had to put the time into it also. Yeah. So
there's a very
that was the hard part, is paying yourself when it came down to it.
And there's a very strict time limitation, because it's like, I need you for a whole day on this day. So it's like you can only have one client that day, and then you're going to have a couple days of admin and finding clients. So it's like you can only take a couple clients a week max, probably.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
Yes.
And so how did you transition from being a full-time photographer into starting this foundation?
Well, it started with my wife, my past wife, Helen. And at the age 35, she had her first diagnosis of breast cancer. And so as she went through, and she was an emergency room nurse, and so she was very dedicated to the medical solution to the breast cancer. And back then, not a lot of young women were getting breast cancer. And when I grew up, nobody had a mom that had a disease or illness, or, moms were indestructible. And then that was kind of the transition from the baby boomers in that era. So when she, at 35, she was, which I was right at the peak of my photography business. But when she became ill and started needing, somebody to go with her to appointments and just being there to be a support, I was able to utilize the time that I had free with in my own business. I wasn't committed to a person for a certain time period. So I was available not only for her, but also for my 2 daughters. And so that became a great way for me to share that, because when it's all said and done, it's not how much money you made, it's the connections that you've made and making her life as meaningful as possible. Because when you deal with cancer, with breast cancer, you're dealing with mortality, you're dealing with illness, you're dealing with what identity as from your gender point of view, and to be able to go through the ups and downs of the treatment that she went through. And so she survived that first bout, but now that we've learned about 20 to 40% of breast cancer comes back within 5 years. And when it comes back, there's no real surviving so much the second time when it comes back, because that meant that the cancer spread to other areas.
Right.
And that's because normally breast cancer itself doesn't kill you. It's where it spreads to in other parts of your body. Goes to the brain or goes to a part, an organ that is necessary for your survival.
Right.
And so she ended up passing when she was 48 years old. And my daughters were teenagers. And by that time, I had made in my mind kind of a commitment that there was a big gap in the breast cancer industry, and they dealt mostly with the treatment and the surviving that, but there was nothing about prevention or that the daughter of a mother that has breast cancer, now she has an elevated risk like my daughters did. And my daughters were terrified. They were saying, Dad, I'm going to get breast cancer also. Or as they got a little older, the medical community basically gave them pity and said, come back when you're 40 to find out whether you have breast cancer or not, when you can get a mammogram. And as a dad, I said that was really not the way it should be, especially with my daughters.
Right.
Let's look at what they can do to prevent it.
Especially since your wife had it before the age of 40. If she waited till she was 40 to find out,
she never would have made it.
Yeah.
And so, but the medical community was really clueless on prevention. They were, when you have it, it's early detection and early detection. But what we found out with prevention is that it had been living in your body for 8 to 10 years before even earliest detection could detect it. So there was an 8 to 10 year window that if your body is starting to go towards a cancerous state, in order for it to grow enough to be even detected or big enough that it could metastasize, that there are a lot of things that you could be doing for prevention. And then also we found out that less than 10% of breast cancer is genetic, because the medical community wants you to think that it is genetic so that you're a victim. Your cards came up bad, but 1 out of 8. So they would look at a room of 10 women and say, one or two of you are going to get breast cancer. And so it terrified women.
Right.
Women were, there's nothing I can do, so I might as well just, live my life and not see if there's something I can do to be proactive. But once we started researching it, that we found over 80% is lifestyle choices and behaviors and things that you can do to lower your risk of breast cancer. And
what would a couple of those, what would be the couple that you would say you would recommend here for people that are listening?
Well, two of the biggest ones is avoiding radiation to your chest, because especially young women, until you have your first child, your breast tissue is immature. So if you're getting radiation like an early mammogram, then you would actually be absorbing a lot more of the radiation than what a woman that would be older that had children that have more mature. And the other one that we learned about that very few other people knew about was vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is something that you get from the sun. But if you're not out in the sun, you have to supplement to do that. And research here at University of California at San Diego showed that you could lower your risk of breast cancer by up to 77 to 80% if you kept your vitamin D3 level at an optimal blood serum level. And and also the reoccurrence of breast cancer by up to 50%. And those were numbers that nobody knew anything about. But that vitamin D research came because there's not a lot of people that benefit from vitamin D production.
Right.
There's not pharmaceutical companies that are trying to sell you the latest treatment, this latest genetic treatment. But vitamin D3 is very, very easy. Other one is stress, because the big part of prevention of cancer, and especially breast cancer, is stress to your immune system. And that's where vitamin D helps, is it strengthens your vitamin D3, your immune system. That's the reason why when President Trump had his treatment for COVID-19, vitamin D3 was part of that cocktail that he got. But the key part was keeping your blood level at an optimal level. But and there is a huge epidemic of vitamin D3 deficiency. So people needed to supplement that. So we talk about that. We talk about what type of birth control that you're taking. Are you putting artificial estrogen in your body through progesterone type of birth control? That is really affecting your cells in your breast tissue, because your breast tissue is always regenerating. It's a very quick regenerational cell. I know sometimes my daughters tell me that I know too much about breast tissue and breast cancer in that part, but it really is just very fascinating because men are 1% of breast cancer. So those are the things that we talk about. And when we would go out to college events and outreach program, we'd have a banner that would say, these are the prevention things. What are the things that you can do to lower your breast cancer? Let's have you make that if you can change one of those behaviors, if you can have not 3 drinks a day, but you can cut it down to 1 drink a day or once a week, you can lower your risk of breast cancer by up to 50%. So the girls would come and they would pledge saying, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep at night. I'm going to lower my alcohol. I'm not going to smoke. I'm going to find out what my vitamin D3 level is to supplement that. I'm going to eat healthy. So those are things that we learned were very vital ways that a young woman and any person can lower their risk of cancer or breast cancer.
It's interesting because a lot of those things sound like they would help your general overall health also. So it's not like, it's only good to do those things, as a woman or someone who's worried about breast cancer, but those just sound like good things to do already.
Living healthy is your body has a chance, because everybody has cancer cells in their bodies, because parts of their cells get die and they ferment, and if they continue to be supported, then they become rapidly growing as part of a mutation to their genetic material. And so everybody has cancer in their body, but it's a matter of how your immune system can deal with it. So all the things that you can do to increase your body's ability to defend itself, the better it can be. And when cancer starts to take that foothold, in that 8 to 10 years before it can be identified by early detection. It starts to bring blood vessels to it. So it brings different signatures to whether you have like a thermogram or something. It can say, okay, your body, you have a hot spot in your body, or there's a reason you're not feeling so well. That can be identified, and then you can do proactive. You can do detox things that can alleviate that hot spot in your body, or take supplementations that'll keep the blood flowing, the not to flow to the cancer cells.
Right.
So there's things that you can do if you know that you are high risk or that you have the precursors. Because there's one of the things we found out there were 3 precursors to breast cancer. And one is estrogen dominance. So if your body holds a lot of estrogen, then it's going to affect your breast cells, and it's going to be nourished in a way that it's going to be allowed to be rapidly growing. The other is chronic inflammation. You've heard that going to your dentist and getting the abscess of your tooth taken care of, because that bacteria that gets from your teeth into your bloodstream affect your immune system, because it has to fight that chronic inflammation,
right?
That infection. And so the cancer cells kind of go, oh wow, we got shade here, we got cover, because that's a bad infection up there. And so the body deals with that, and the cancer starts to take a foothold in your body. So chronic inflammation, and then lymphatic congestion. So your lymphatic system, from massages, takes all the bad toxic material out of your blood, out of your body, and it goes out through your armpits and other lymphatic areas. And if your body is not able to get rid of the toxic material, then that toxic environment affects your cells, and they become anaerobic. They become precursor to cancerous cells. So all those things were really fascinating, and it became a great story in that my daughters were teenagers. They were in their early teens. So the things that we were finding out directly affected them.
Right.
And so as a dad, that became very pleasing to know that we could help somebody like my daughter that lost their mom to breast cancer. Because we'd be at college outreaches, and a girl would come up to, and she'd look us in the eye, and she goes, nobody has ever given me any tools on how to deal with this. My mom has breast cancer, my aunt has breast cancer, and I just see myself as a victim. Wow, you are providing us hope. You are providing us a means to deal with that information rather than freaking out, because actress like Angelina Jolie, she was so fearful of breast cancer that she had her breast cut off. But a lot of people don't know that she also had to have her ovaries taken out, because the estrogen that's coming into your body has to go somewhere. And so rather than, people were not just okay with being a victim, they wanted to be proactive. Right. So our message had a very proactive, very hopeful, a very creative way that you can prevent breast cancer.
Very nice. So I think all that's very important, and I'm glad that, we can do our little bit to share that, to get that information out. What are the next steps for the organization? What are your goals? Like, what are you hoping to do in the next year?
Well, one of the things that when we would go out to our outreach, that the young women were going, well, we don't know what our vitamin D3 level is, because that 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter is critical, but it takes more than what you would get in your normal daily multivitamin. And so I was giving blood at the San Diego Blood Bank a couple years ago, and I've given over 8 gallons of blood, because I'm an O negative, so they call me all the time saying, come on in. And so I asked them, I said, well, I would really like to know what my vitamin D3 level is. And they go, well, we can't do that for you. They would tell me what my glycerides, my cholesterol level would be, what my heartbeat, they'd give me all that information, but they wouldn't give me that critical number for vitamin D3.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the projects that we're working with is collaborative with the San Diego Blood Bank, that if you come in and you donate blood, you can find out what's your vitamin D3 level. And if it's low, you can up your supplementation so that you can get it to that optimal, because everybody should be at that optimal level.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, you're not giving your body the tools in order for it to work effectively in your immune system.
Right.
And that's what supplies. So that's one project that we're very excited about. And the other is really getting out to the different colleges to be able to, millennials, this college age women, they want to be involved. They want to be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to give them the tools to kind of create their own Helen Knoll Foundation or breast cancer prevention club on campus, so that they can get the word out to the women that you can be proactive and there is a positive, especially for the women that have a family history of breast cancer.
That's beautiful. Well, I think that if someone wanted to find the organization to be able to help out, to donate, to support, to volunteer, how would they find you? HelenKnollFoundation.org. We have a website there. We Facebook, all the social media type of connections that young women work, but primarily through our website. And one of the things that's nice about our website too is that we have a list of people that you can contact that are resources. One being my daughter, who is now a therapist. So you can actually call a daughter that lost her mom to breast cancer, and to be able to go through that process, because the first thing you find out when your mom has breast cancer, there's a grieving process. Oh no, my mom's going to die. My mom is going to be sick. You're going to see her lose her hair. You're going to see her go through chemo and just become sickly, and it's going to scare the heck out of you. That was probably one of the most terrifying times in my life, is when my mom had breast cancer and she had to shave her head, and like her hair was falling out and she had her head shaved, and that was like, and you want to be a warrior, difficult. And you want to support her, and you want to be a team. You want to do the walks. You want to be the awareness, but there are things that you can actually be doing yourself to lower your risk, and that would make your mom that has breast cancer so much relieve her to knowing that her daughter is not going to have to go through the same thing that she had to go through. It's probably also a great resource for the mother who has the cancer, to be able to know what her daughter's going to go through, and like how she can be supportive, and all that as well. So you'd be able to talk about nutrition, talk about birth control, talk about what she could do so she's not elevating her risk. Because if you have a first generation for breast cancer, your mother has it, your aunt has it, your risks are high. You have to really pay attention to all your lifestyle choices and behaviors. You have to care about how much you drink. If you definitely don't smoke, don't be overweight, because those are all just things that are going to elevate what you have as that by having a first generational mother having it. So that's a big part of that. Definitely. Well, David, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with us today. And I'm happy to help. I want to help out any way I can, and I hope that people get this message. Getting the message out is and the funny thing, you were asking about the early parts, where I was a biological studies in college, and now it really has come back into the prevention part of the understanding of the immune system, and to be able to get this message out to young women that there is that there's hope, that they don't have to be just the victim. And that's a real positive message, and my daughters have really thrived as a result of that message. They don't fear breast cancer like
they did initially.
Right. And it's a message worth getting out there.
Yes, very much so. And as a dad, it makes me very, very happy.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Jeff.